That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable. That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
In 2011, the FBI added a short one-page memo to their extensive online archive that sent waves throughout the UFO world. The memo, addressed directly to then-Director J. Edgar Hoover, had been sent from the desk of the head of the Washington field office. The memo contained claims from a third-party source that the Air Force has recovered alien craft from the New Mexico desert. Not only had the military recovered crashed vehicles, but also the memo had details of bodies that had been retrieved from inside the craft as well. UFO researchers pored over these details and came to the conclusion that, although the details seemed to resemble the alleged Roswell UFO crash, the memo may actually have been describing an entirely different event from a book published in 1950 that contained claims from scientists who had worked on the retrieval of an approximately 100-foot craft almost 300 miles northwest of the infamous Roswell. This case file joined the theorists as they lower themselves to the basest of Base 9, discussing the Aztec UFO Crash.
Welcome to Alien Theorists Theorizing Case File 211, the Aztec UFO Crash. I'm Braden.
I'm Zell.
I'm Dan.
And I'm Andrew.
You're supposed to say I'm Big Daddy Z or Big Daddy Zed.
My coven grows. one more member.
Your brood.
My brood.
Yeah. You've got some serious baggage there under those eyes there, my friend.
It's been a rough day. It's been a rough day. It's a misconception, you know. Some people say vampires don't sleep. We actually need sleep more.
You're supposed to sleep all day, aren't you?
Yeah, it's low hemoglobin. You got to sleep a lot. And little baby girl, you know what? She was pretty good for the first 10 days, and then we've had a setback today. Just fighting the sleep.
Just saving it up.
Yeah, she's building it up.
Permanent setback, pal.
So I got a half a mug of coffee and filled with half coffee whiskey. So,
coffee at 7:30 p.m. Wow, well, it's a bold move.
I'm planning on not sleeping.
Time has no meaning anymore.
I'm planning on not sleeping again.
Ever. Going on 2.5 years here, pal. We need sleep.
That's pretty funny. This case file tonight that we got going. First off, it's weird because we had almost a 2-week break, but it didn't feel like a 2-week break. But it's nice to be back, anyways. Like I said, I was especially coming back after Spooktober. I know what I forgot to do. I know now what I forgot to do.
And what's that?
I was supposed to fucking spin that because I was gone for a week, and I had all the meat draw for the Spooktober
contest
with the pumpkin entries. I was supposed to pick.
Yeah. I even said something yesterday.
I know you did.
You fucking blew it.
That's what I said. You know what? By the end of the show, I'll have one picked. Just randomly.
I mean, it's give or take here. You got your choices. You get skinny smart Braden, or you get fat funny Braden.
Well, can we?
We're slowly slipping into fat funny Braden.
There's no in between.
There's no in between.
Well, and right now I'm in this weird in between mode, right? Where it's like I'm not quite funny, not quite smart, not too dumb.
Everything's just fucked up.
But ugly. But
there's no consistency here right now.
The time just changed, just went back. Days are long and dark. Fat Braden's coming quick.
Yeah.
Hey, listen.
You know what? I think we're further along in Fat Braden than he's admitting here. Why don't we shave that fucking beard, Braden, and have a look? I need a chin count.
What's under the beard?
What's under there?
You mean what's behind the mic? You think I put it like this for aesthetic reasons? Yes, I do. It hides this. Sugar water.
Before we get into this case file, I mean, it's a pretty fun one. It's kind of like a Roswell 2.0, not far away.
Hey.
But before then, for 2 weeks, I was trying to have a little family time, bond with young Zell, and this fucking ATI blowing me up all day, every day. So I gotta play this. Fuck, those motherfuckers won't leave me alone. I need all reasons to sleep.
Oh, we got infiltrated too. That's right.
Yeah, we did.
Yes.
Got infiltrated too.
They sent a death threat to my house.
How'd they get your address?
I gave it to him, I think.
You guys want to send me free stuff? You want to send me free stuff? Go ahead.
Send me some stuff, man.
I was like, oh, death threats. This isn't what I wanted.
Why do you need my address? Don't you just need my PayPal account?
Yeah, paypal.me/BradenATT. No big deal.
No biggie. They'll take anything.
Yeah, right. If you want to support me and not the rest of the guys,
look them up.
Yeah.
All right, ATI, back at it. See, I'm not sure what this is though. Find out right now.
The following announcement has been paid for by Alien Theorists Illuminati.
For the record, please state your name.
My name is Raven, professional wrestling superstar, but you already know that.
Who are you doing this for?
This is for Braden, Zell, Dan, and Andrew.
Who are you
I got your name right.
The Alien Theorist Illuminati. Ooh, the Illuminati. Ooh, well then. Bring on the grand piano. He wants to play for the Queen. Come on.
Are the alien theorists smart about aliens and conspiracies?
They're not that smart about aliens and other conspiracies. They're a bunch of dum-dums.
They're dum-dums.
So I don't know whether to put them over or to bury them. But either way, they're a bunch of dum-dums. So I'm going to go with the roast opposite.
Do you remember when
not
you were
wrong.
briefly on their podcast?
Of course I was, because I'm a big star.
Do you think they should have you back on the podcast?
Well, duh. You should have me back. And the group that's taking over your podcast is never let a group take over your podcast.
Not a choice.
Maybe an individual, sure, but not a group. What are you thinking? Anyway, and get some real names. Braden, Zell, those aren't real names. Those are fictitious if I've ever heard fake names. So, nothing left to say but, quote the Raven, nevermore.
Oh,
Raven.
gotta change your names.
Our names are fake and we're a bunch of
Raven
dum-dums.
said.
yeah.
He's not wrong about the dum-dums.
funny. Well, yeah, he's absolutely.
I mean,
He's
Braden,
absolutely
you're more
right.
of a Craig anyways. I mean,
Yeah. I think we've all determined that. Funny guy.
Raven. Yeah, that was like our first. We tried to have a guest on so long ago. Just wouldn't work. Yeah,
Yeah. Well, maybe we'll try.
we're better now.
Maybe
We're
we'll
better
do.
at the virtual shit. So maybe we can make it work.
Yeah.
No
As long
promises.
as he doesn't want to talk about flat Earth, though.
Yeah, it's true.
loves
Is he a
talking
flat
about
Earth
that.
guy?
No, he just loves talking about it. But he's not a flat Earth guy. He just loves talking about it, though. But
I just find talking about it. It's just
Yeah.
It's fun. We done it. We're not doing Flat Earth 3.
no, hell no.
no.
This, now unless there's some like huge,
It is flat.
Yeah, like, oh shit, we were wrong. Flat Earth 3.
Fuck, man, we
Who would
fucked
have
up.
thought? First we say Donald Trump's not going to be president. Then we told you the Earth's not flat. 2 for 2 wrong.
Bunch of dummies.
We kind of like with COVID too. We're like, it's nothing to do with it.
Not a
Is
big
that a
deal.
big deal?
Nothing.
If we say something, do the opposite.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But
if you
believe
don't know
the
that
opposite.
by now, that's your own goddamn fault.
Yeah. So this case file though is like digging into it. I couldn't believe I'd never heard of it before. And I think I've probably heard whispers of it and looked at it. But when I dug into it, I'm like, man, surface level, you're like, oh, there's nothing to this. And then you scratch it a little and you're like, oh my God, there's a lot of moving parts. There's a lot of, interesting people involved. It's a fascinating account.
It's not widely known either.
This case, the Aztec UFO case, I remember hearing about this a long time ago, and probably around like the early 2000s or something, there was a memo, an FBI memo that came out called the Guy Hoddle memo that came out. And essentially it was a big deal in UFO circles. I remember it like kind of popping up in the news for like a couple news stories.
We've
mentioned it
before.
Oh, we've mentioned it before, and we'll probably go over it again for those who are unfamiliar with it. But the Guy Hoddle memo is referring to the Aztec UFO crash. We're out in Aztec, New Mexico, in this area. What is it? The Hart Plateau or something? The Hart Plateau out there.
I wasn't sure if they were saying heart or hard.
I heard heart.
I heard hard.
And if you look at our meme, it's in the shape. There's a rocks in the shape of a heart, so I assumed it was heart.
So out there is a small little plaque, and on this plaque is inscribed a story about what happened there. So this is what it says on the plaque, and I'll just read it out here. So, on or about this site on March 25th, 1948, a spacecraft or of origins unknown crashed or landed on this mesa. It is alleged the Los Alamos radar station near El Vado, New Mexico, tracked the errant landing to this site. A high security recovery operation led by the Air Force and the 5th Army Division was responsible for the removal of this craft. The recovery operation took approximately 2 weeks, with all the remains being taken to Los Alamos Laboratory for scientific study and evaluation by some of the world's leading scientists. Later, it was rumored to have been taken to Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in Dayton, Ohio. The recovery of this craft by the U.S. government and military was one of the most secretive recoveries of a spacecraft with origins unknown since the similar recoveries in Roswell, New Mexico, 8 months earlier. And then we'll talk about this. So then there's a little bit like describing the craft and stuff, but that's mainly the subject
gist
of the Aztec UFO crash. That's mostly what it is. Now, a lot of this story comes from one Frank Scully. Now, Frank Scully wrote a book entirely about this. He published a book in 1950 called Behind the Flying Saucers, right on the kind of on the upswing of the UFO phenomenon that was going on during that time. And Frank Scully was an American journalist and author who was a regular columnist for the entertainment trade magazine Variety.
Ooh.
So he was well known around things. He had penned articles and things like this before. And then so in October,
wasn't it you telling me earlier that the character Scully?
Yes, Dana Scully is her namesake is Frank Scully. They took his name and gave it to
She's based off
Agent
of some
Dana
dude
Scully
from the 40s, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
They had a big fucking
the name.
Yeah, it's
her.
reported that her character
it's directly based on him.
Yeah, it's directly based off of his name or on an homage to Frank Scully.
Her middle name's Frank? Isn't that what it is?
Yes,
Dana Frank Scully.
Dana Frank Scully.
Dana Frank Scully.
Yeah,
I think that checks out.
Yeah, I'd say so.
So in October and November, Scully actually published 2 columns in Variety that claimed that dead extraterrestrials had been recovered from a flying saucer crash. And then in 1950, he published that book, Behind the Flying Saucers, which kind of expanded on the topic. And in this book, he specifically mentions like 2 scientists, which he'd kind of communicated with, which had given him kind of direct firsthand knowledge, or they at least implied that they had firsthand knowledge of what they had seen at this crash site. Like they had been there when it had happened. They had worked on government projects before, and they had been there when this craft had crashed into this area of New Mexico.
Did it crash or did it land? The events seem scattered.
I'm going to go ahead and say it crashed. And
there's some damage to it, is when I remember when they went through it.
Yeah, there's like the mess of there is like some hill area that has some seemingly like it looks like it's been hit or impacted by something in a horizontal fashion before coming down to
there's
land.
like a
where
large
they say crash.
laceration in it, right? Like
and they say looking at this that this wouldn't be made from water erosion. One, because it would be vertical, and two, there's not a lot of rain there, so it would take like so many years for that kind of erosion, if it were to even happen. But the horizontal would not, especially where it is.
So another down craft.
Frank Scully interviewed two major sources for this story on the Aztec, New Mexico crash. And he gave them pseudonyms, and he had Scientist X and Dr. G.
Dr. G.
Oh, dude.
Oh, Dr. G.
Scientist X.
That's fucking.
And he refers
she's
to
got
him
a
as
couple
such.
platinum albums too. Dr. G.
We should make a comic book called that: The Adventures of Dr. G and Scientist X.
Yeah, we could.
Who can draw?
In a number of trade magazines.
None of us.
It'd be stick figure battle drawings. That's it.
But hey, we'll have some witty dialogue. Probably not, but.
So as to the whole story is what happened. Now, apparently it was two tenescopes, right? This is directly from the book. Tenescopes. Tenescopes. Tenescopes.
Let's pretend people don't know what a telescope is. Let's tell them what the fuck.
Yeah. We all know what it is.
We know what it is.
Yeah.
I don't know what a telescope is.
It's the telescope that you use to watch people play tennis when you're in the top of the bleachers.
The little ones.
Yeah,
dude. I just thought it was. I thought it was a typo.
I did too. I thought telescopes was a typo, and I went through that book and went through the book of Behind the Flying Saucers and found it mentioned and spelled the same way at least several more times. Telescopes. I tried to look up what it is. I thought it was some type of like a radar device or some kind of specific like directed radar or something like that. I haven't found anything. Like there's nothing mentioned about what it is. They don't really explain what it is in the book. But from the kind of the feeling or like the descriptions of like how they used it, it's like some type of radar, mechanism. Okay. Now these telescopes caught an unidentified ship as it came through our atmosphere, and they watched it, its position, and then kind of estimated where it landed. Now there is some kind of there's a bit of kind of guesswork involved. There are reports that two other radar facilities in New Mexico had kind of caught it on this craft. Had caught it on their screens as well, and they kind of ended up triangulating it after it kind of fell off radar or out of radar range. The telescope, they were able to triangulate where this craft had kind of seemed to be going, and then they kind of from there is where they kind of began their search. Now, apparently, these objects were found within a few hours after it had landed / crashed. It's not quite clear what happened. There is some talk of like perhaps it had some type of automated landing mechanism or some kind of automated landing technology, autopilot, which kind of like put it down a little bit too rough. But
did the ET park assist?
Yeah.
Well, maybe it hit the side of the bank, right? Caused the gouge in the side of the mesa, and then just auto landed, right? Like, but maybe that impact, did some of the damage that we'll talk about later.
And so Air Force officers were dispatched from the flying field in Durango, Colorado, in order to search for this craft. And when they found it, it was on this very high rocky plateau in the
that was heart-shaped,
right? East of Aztec, New Mexico.
Heart-shaped.
It said, Scientist X is relaying this story to Frank Scully. And he says that during that time, the scientist had studied the ship from a distance, as he would, and, because you don't know where this craft has been. You don't know what, what it's capable of. He said that they're kind of assessing it by using, Geiger counters. He mentioned specifically cosmic rays. Not quite sure how they did that, and then other protective devices, trying to find out if it was kind of if there's harmful radiation or any type of chemical, whatever, if it's safe to approach. Right. Now, after those 2 days, apparently they started kind of after they were able to approach the craft, or they deemed it safe enough, these scientists were kind of clambering all over it, trying to find a way into this craft because they couldn't find what they marked as like the hulls seemed to be made of some type of silvery aluminum, like completely smooth material. There were no bolts. There were no, like, it didn't look like there were any welding. There was no, it's just completely almost one solid.
So we got ourselves a classic
outside, like
saucer, like
classic saucer,
silver, like a dome on top and a little bit on the bottom, full ring around. But this one's huge, 100-foot diameter.
Right.
Isn't it like 99.9?
99.999.
Yeah.
It is 0.99.9. So I'll talk about that. That is important later. Now, they couldn't find a door or anything that was, clearly represented on the outside of this craft. So what they did apparently is they found a broken porthole of some type, which appeared from their first examination to be made of some type of glass or something like that. And then, when they examined it later, it wasn't, according to Scientist X, it wasn't any type of glass that they recognized that could be produced on Earth. So finally, in order to gain access into the craft, they did the very scientific thing to do and took a large pole and rammed it through the hole in the defect of the ship. So through this cracked glass, they just shoved a pole in there and kind of wiggled it around.
Yeah, dude, it's the classic, like, same thing when you lock your keys in your car, right? You just jam the fucking coat hanger and jimmy that motherfucker.
They jimmied the UFO.
Picture it, I picture it like fucking, it's just such advanced machinery. And then we got our like top scientists on this, but it's still like fucking, Zoolander, the files are in the computer and they're just like shaking it and smacking it and poking sticks with it. And then magically it fucking pops open. They're like, yeah, we knew about that the whole time.
So they're poking through. It's not like an actual, like, it's part of the broken piece of a craft. That's where they're poking. It's not like an actual, like, it's sometimes ETs are portrayed with long fingers. It's not like an ET would stick their finger in this hole normally and open the door.
No. It was some type of like crack or hole in this, or what seemed to be. It was not. It's definitely not meant to be there.
Right.
And this is what they kind of assumed later is like, this is probably some defect or some damage to the craft that ended up, being a primary cause of the crash of the craft or the malfunction of some type. And so they kind of just jammed a pole in there to kind of either widen it out, figure out some way to get in. And then, but this actually allowed them, after they withdrew the pole, they were able to view inside the craft itself. And when they took a look in there, what they found was, astounding to them. Now,
no kidding.
They were able to, according to Scientist X, they were able to count 16 bodies that ranged from 36 to 42 inches.
Oh,
so like
classic small gray
toddlers,
very small. Right? They're very small.
But the thing is, we don't. Yes, we get the small stature, but we don't get the description. A lot of the description is just childlike. That's it.
Well, yeah, and what's crazy about that? As soon as they started mentioning that, my fucking brain started spinning because I immediately thought to fucking our interview with Dr. Michael Masters.
Ooh.
Because what he explains is what he thinks with the time travelers. So they're not aliens; they're us traveling from the fucking future. And he basically explains that evolutionary trends may lead to humans to appear like, our popular idea of what an alien is, but basically they're just humans suffering from neoteny, which is like the slowing of the body, the development of the body, which means you basically are maintaining these childlike features.
Little Hasblas.
Well, exactly.
No hair, small, like barely any muscles.
But the weird thing too is they had a full set of teeth.
Right.
Kids got to eat.
Perfect
right?
teeth.
Perfect teeth.
Right?
According to,
right?
Yeah.
But no, it's not.
It means you got some sort of braces or some shit going on.
Like
orthodontics.
Well, but that's the weird thing, though. It's like whenever you get these, whenever we do these case files, they're so quick to explain. Like they look like fucking.
So are you saying
green or gray? But
it will be available in the future. Universal free dental care.
Oh yeah, hell yeah. We won't even need it. You'll be born, man. When they plug in your digit, you'll just come out with straight teeth.
Just be DNA manipulation for perfect teeth.
Yeah.
Well, they're probably fucking getting it. They're getting the perfect nutrients in a little fucking gel packet, right? There's no fucking
in a
sugar
jelly
in there.
bean.
They're not getting any cavities or anything like that.
Yeah.
Teeth aren't getting damaged, but no, it's still like they don't really explain these guys. Like they're not discolored. They're not. Their bodies were charred or whatever, right? So it's kind of hard to examine. But
Right.
like, I don't know. Maybe Dr. Michael Masters is onto something, man.
He was a smart guy. I like.
So
what he had
now
to say.
they prodded around in the hole as you do, and then apparently they stumbled upon what is like they were able to reach some type of double knob, which they said they pushed against this double knob, and then to their surprise, the door flew open, popped open.
A little steam came out.
And so they're able to more closely examine these bodies. And again, said that, yeah, they're pretty much normal from every standpoint. Like they were small, but they were equally proportioned. Like they were healthily proportioned as just a small human. I guess he would be like some type of like, Homo florensis or something like, they are proportioned. They're that way.
Right.
That's right. When what they would call.
They weren't a little person. They were like a proportioned, they're different species of hominid.
Right.
What they look like. Now, when they said they're burnt, did like the rest of the craft look burnt, or did these things just like look burnt from what? Like when I was reading, didn't they have a description of like the interior of the craft being burnt? It just seemed like the creatures were burnt.
See, what I wondered about that, if maybe they're not, maybe our oxygen or something, if there's a crack in the ship and something was got in, maybe their skin, like whatever
corrosive
reaction they were having from our atmosphere and that, melted their faces or something, right? Like, or some, that's where my brain went, because I didn't get any description of a fire on board or anything. So to have these burnt bodies, but maybe there was some sort of, a fire suppression system.
Well, I mean, on that theory, like we breathe oxygen and we're like, oh, it's great for us, but it is a corrosive gas. Like
it oxidizes.
Yeah, it's like, right? So if you didn't have the right chemical composition to be in an oxygen-rich environment, maybe fucks you up.
Either that or they found the Ark and tried to open it.
Zap.
And then the Nazis came and took it back from them.
Right.
It's Nazi Bell, time traveling.
None of the from the descriptions and the as told by Scientist X, I think the equipment was mostly inside the ship was intact. I don't think there was any real mention of any type of damage or any serious type of like anything kind of being out of place. It seemed like all the equipment and stuff was intact, and then the bodies are just, he described them as having some type of the skin seemed to be charred a quote dark chocolate color.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, their suits are indestructible.
Yes, apparently.
Well, and yeah, these suits, no insignias, no nothing, like just blank flight suits.
Sane armor,
potentially. Yeah, but Saiyans wouldn't get charred like that. Their power level would just go up.
Yeah, that's true.
It wouldn't be phased.
Once they had removed the bodies or something, and they had removed the bodies, taken the bodies out, they were able to more closely, they started kind of examining the craft, in earnest, and they're able to go in the outside and around the outside. Now, we mentioned about it before. Now, the overall dimensions of the craft, they said is like this craft was about 100 feet in diameter, but it is important to note that it is 99.99999. They were very specific in Frank Scully's book, Scientist X, mentions this because the cabin, which was entirely round, so this is within the raised domed center of this craft from what we can tell from illustrations taken from descriptions of this craft, is that was actually 18 feet across, and then it was 72 inches in height, and then exactly 45 inches of the cabin was exposed above the outer rim of the saucer, and this is where the portholes were located in this area. Now, these measurements, you have 18, 72, 45, and then the 99.99999. This and a couple of other like evidence they had found, like within the distributions and the way that this craft was built, led the scientists to hypothesize that these beings had some type of base 9 system of mathematics. and engineering.
Instead of our base 10 metric system, they got a base 9.
Indubitably.
Right. So
It's like the Dewey
kind of
Decimal System. I understand that. I get
Which
it.
They operate on
like
the base
weird.
9. Oh, yeah.
I mean, to me,
That's
I'd
very
be
interesting.
these are inches and feet, and so I mean in meters, and it wouldn't really have any
And
significance.
centimeters.
Yeah.
And centimeters wouldn't really
Oh.
have any significance. But
Sometimes if you're looking for numbers and patterns, they can show up. We know that. We've talked about that tons.
Well, people say, or Tesla always said, like the secrets of the universe are in 3, 6, and 9.
Yeah.
and
That's all I can go with. Like a base 9 would operate pretty much like a base 10 and just only have 9 valid digits. Like it would be, it wouldn't really be any. Actually, I think it would make math harder.
That's what we want to do.
Yeah, please don't do that.
Now, once they got inside, they were able to kind of identify like what equipment was able to do kind of stuff. They're like, okay, this is like they had buttons and dials and knobs galore to pour over
And
while they're
compact discs.
in compact
Flat
discs.
screen,
I don't remember reading
TV
that.
screen.
but-
CDs, you say?
Yeah,
Flat-
flat screens. Yeah, flat screens too.
Flat screens, which was, these are not, again, in the 1950s for you to be coming up with these things,
It's preposterous.
preposterous. But there's descriptions of compact disc. And when I've heard that, I went, oh, okay, well, like, we had CDs, but like now looking back at the era of CDs, I'm like, those don't seem like the best thing to store, data on anymore, CDs.
No.
So then it got me thinking, I really went like because that was a really long hang up for me. I was like, why the fuck would a species traverse time and space have fucking compact discs? Like that's like
Nostalgic.
So then there's only two options in my mind. One is that the whatever science they have around their craft to fly it, whether it is flying or pushing through space-time, does that directly have to be involved? Like maybe like their flight aerodynamics is like way up here, but like their data storage is fucking way down here, right? Like we're ahead of the curve on Earth here with our data storage with USB sticks.
No.
They're still using CDs. Or, right? It's had old radio that they had to fucking plug.
That's what I'm saying.
CDs
They're
in.
nostalgic, man. The guy's got a Shania Twain CD in their fucking spaceship.
Yeah.
Throwback to the oldies.
I thought of it like we use like some type of pretty much plastic, some type of plastic, like polycarbonate or something for our CDs. And it only has pretty low data storage. But imagine, because the thing about a CD is you can pack a lot of them. They're like easy to store. You can stack them up really nice. Like they are pretty nice to store. So say you had a CD with some type of like crystal storage, and on one CD you could have like 15 terabytes of information. Maybe it's just like a different. They're not using like low storage plastic like we did. They have some like some crystal
Diamond discs.
Yeah, some diamond discs.
Crystal discs.
Maybe. I was just
Ones
trying.
that don't skip or get scratched.
Yeah, they don't.
Oh my
yeah,
God.
I mean, diamond's harsh material. It doesn't scratch. It's never going to skip on you. You can take it through cosmic rays, radiation. That's where my mind went.
Right, and and they also on the ship had the most or one of the most primitive ways to store data, because apparently they also had some pamphlets and booklets made of some type of paper or paper-like material, which they believe dealt with some type of navigation problems, which ended up, according to Scientist X, sent to like the Air Force. They said that they had people to decipher these things.
I'm using the same theory for the paper pamphlets. It's not paper at all. It's some type of indestructible bimetal flexible material that is,
because you could store more visual.
It has different layers.
Data,
yeah, it has different
denser.
layers on it.
The ink they use is denser, so it's more information.
Dan,
I get it.
He's on it. He's on the ball here.
I got it. So Scientist X and his staff must have been fucking wildin', because once they got inside the ship and they saw all these buttons and shit, apparently one of the guys or a couple of the staff were like, you know what, the best way to fucking figure out how all this shit
Push
works?
them all.
Press the fucking buttons. Let's just press this button. Let's press this button.
Listen,
is Braden
dude,
in there?
this is
exactly something he would do.
This doesn't surprise me, because we've talked about the motherfuckers wearing cowboy hats, fusing fucking nuclear metal together, spacing them out with their fingers. Like, this shit doesn't surprise me back in the day. Like, they don't give a fuck. right? They're just like, yeah, fuck it, whatever. What do these do? Like, just throw more men. If they die,
they must have learned their lesson, because at least they came to a consensus that was probably the worst thing that they could probably do is press a button when they have no idea how this ship functions at all. But the fact that it was even brought up is mind-boggling to me.
Let's be honest here. If the four of us randomly found a spacecraft and we get in it, I guarantee you Zell's pushing a button.
You too.
The first thing I do is push the button.
I'd probably be hesitant at first, and then as soon as Zell pushed one, I'd be like, fucking.
Zell would be looking for alien things to consume. Yeah. If you look at those little charred midgets being like, I wonder if I eat one of them and would I get their superpowers? Like, is that how this works?
You absorb their powers if you eat it.
I feel like everyone knows this.
Now, after a long study and not exactly clear how long a long study is, they figured out that the ship is actually assembled in segments, and that these segments fitted into grooves that were all kind of pinned together around the base of this craft. Now, they were able to actually lift the cabin from the bottom of the saucer, and then they found a gear completely encircling the bottom of the craft. And then this gear fitted into another gear that was on the cabin. So I assume like it's some type of it has like a rotational capacity of some type. I assume they use gears.
Two gears on board. Interesting.
Yeah.
Where do you keep the red mercury?
I'm not sure. I mean, they used red mercury for lubrication. I don't know. Like gears seems like a bit of a primitive principle to kind of put on your ship. But
no, I'm going back to the same thing, Dan. They're using different types of gears here.
High density crystal lattice gears. Got it.
I don't know, man. Perfect. They fought a whole war about gears. All right, the gear wars. We know about this. Yeah. So don't try and fucking downplay the gears for us, buddy.
Yeah,
useful.
Don't be a Gear Wars denier.
Now, in terms of actually like material that these beings required food of some type, because they actually found something in there that they figured out was actually food. It was some type of they found these little
freeze-dried,
like freeze-dried or something, but they were these wafers that they found that they were actually able to feed to guinea pigs. And then
Simple Ricks. What is it called?
He said that the guinea pigs thrived
Simple
on
Rick,
it, so
yeah, Simple Rick's classic wafers.
Relax with the smooth taste of Simple Ricks.
And so and then they found another interesting piece of information that Scientist X relayed to Frank Scully is that they found that these humanoids perhaps needed some type of they function much like us, that they needed some type of liquid or water. They must subsist on water, because they found two containers of water, what they H2O on the ship. But when they checked it, this water was found to be normal in all the aspects, similar to our water, H2O.
Except like Zell said, fucking crazy dense water.
It's twice as heavy.
Yes. Super water.
Dude,
described as being twice as heavy.
It's us from the future coming to visit.
Which is weird, because like there is heavy water. Heavy water does exist, but it's like
chubby rain.
But it's like 10%.
My kind of rain. Chubby rain. Wanna see you laughing in the chubby rain. Chubby rain. Chubby rain.
And that's pretty much the whole of what Scientist X relayed to Frank Scully in his book, and that this was the actual crash that was that recovered there, and then had scientists on there, and then was the matter of like they had to disassemble this craft and then move it to another. Like we said before, Wright-Patterson. We said Wright-Patterson Air Force Base in order for further study.
The real Area 51. None of this other bullshit outside of Vegas. This is the real one. It's where they took all the crafts and the bodies. They're still there to this day.
And now Scully published this book in 1950. And then Scientist X, and when he wrote this book, Scientist X and Dr. G were very much
dedicated to his daughter, Dana Scully?
We're Dana Frank Scully.
Yeah, Dana Frank. She's named after her dad's middle name is normal.
And were definitely some persons of interest because the identities of Scientist X and Dr. G were soon to be revealed after this.
It's a perfect time to take a break, Dan. Grab a beer. We're going to be right back.
That's not just the sound of that first sip of Morning Joe. It's the sound of someone shopping for a car on Carvana from the comfort of home.
That's a good blend.
It's time to take it easy, like answering some easy questions to get pre-qualified for a car in minutes.
Talk about starting the morning right.
Just like customizing your terms so your car fits your budget. Visit Carvana.com or download the app to experience car shopping the way it should be. Convenient, comfortable.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
So now the whole thing that kind of ties this whole Aztec UFO crash, like it was all kind of written off as a bit of just like flight of fancies, like in terms of Frank Scully, like the behind the flying saucer, the Aztec UFO crash kind of fell out of the light for like a long time, or was overshadowed by the Roswell crash, which happened and became a lot more popular during the 1970s. And then you had this memo that popped up in the early 2000s, and it was called the Guy Hoddle memo. And I think we've mentioned it when, like we said, we mentioned it before. And so this memo dates back to 1950, and it was an FBI memo, and it is a report that was filed by an FBI agent who was at the time the head of the Bureau's Washington field office. Now, this in this memo, it refers to the descriptions of the UFO from Aztec, New Mexico, the crew members, talking about how these aliens had bodies of human shape, but were only approximately 3 feet tall, dressed in some type of metallic cloth of a very fine texture, and how each of these bodies were bandaged in a manner similar to the blackout suits that are used by speed flyers at the time, or test pilots. And so they were talking about how perhaps this craft had actually been downed by some type of high-powered military radar in the area that interfered with the UFO's controls. Now, this memo was actually made available to the public in the 1970s, like due to a FOIA request by a Navy physicist by the name of Bruce Maccabee. And the Hoddle memo didn't really get a lot of attention until 2011. And I remember this, like I really remember this popping up on the news about this being the whole it was kind of like the ATIP thing, like before ATIP. Yeah. Like it was all before that. I remember this popping up on the news and like the UFO stuff and being like, this is it. This is the smoking gun. This is the whole thing. Like this is at least confirmation that one UFO crash, maybe not, either it was referring to Roswell, or it was talking about, or it was mentioning, referring to some other crashes and maybe even additional crashes besides Roswell. And then, it's been public, and it's been, you're able to view it on the FBI's own public online vault. Like you can pull it up, and there's tons of articles about it. And this all kind of tied it all together. And this was like a whole thing that when I don't know what happened to it in the 1970s, and then it got popular in 2011. I just remember popping up. Now, going back to Frank Scully's primary source for the story about the information regarding the Aztec UFO crash, you have to talk about two people that in the book, he refers to a Scientist X and a Dr. G.
Great names.
And then later on in the book, he identifies them. Like he clearly states like these are pretty much like these are the people.
There was no reason to use fake names. He just calls them out.
I know he calls them Scientist X and he calls them Dr. G, but like in the book he it's almost like he just changes it. He just like stops using the names Scientist X and Dr. G. Like he just stops using it.
Hey, he was spelling telescope wrong the whole time.
So these two men it's still kind of maybe allegedly these two men that he's referring to, Scientist X being Silas M. Newton, and then Dr. G being one Leonard Gebauer. Okay. These two had a bit of history in New Mexico, like are in that area in the Southwest. Now, in the book, Scully talks about how Gebauer and Newton relayed to him that they had developed a type of device that was based on the technology that flying saucers functioned on. Like that is specifically referred to in the book, that they had not necessarily that it had been built from alien technology, but that it had it functioned on the very similar principles of some type of like magnetic field technology or manipulation that these craft were using.
Free energy.
And maybe like they hype the whole magnetic or magnetism aspect of these things, because I think Newton had kind of talked about how these craft, he refers to not only the New Mexico craft, but he had done an actual like lecturing at I believe it was the University of Colorado. And he had kind of said that he is claimed to be a UFO expert. He had worked on a number of government projects alongside Gebauer. They are both kind of like been contracted by the United States military at numerous occasions in order to study these craft. And he had come to the conclusion that these craft were somehow interested or attracted to magnetic fault lines that are spread out throughout our planet. And apparently New Mexico is one of these places where there was like an extended magnetic fault line. And this is where this craft had landed / crashed.
It's salivating right now. I can see in his face. What do you mean? Salivating. I can see
what
it.
What the fuck are you talking about?
Shit. We're talking about your shit right now.
My shit.
Fucking ley lines.
I've
buddy.
never heard of
ley lines.
A ley line is
not
not
shit.
A ley line is not a magnetic fault line. What the? I was going to ask what a magnetic fault line is.
I don't know, because I tried to look it up and it's not. Well,
I mean, I guess it could be the same thing. It's like an energy line, like a point on the world.
I had tried to look up some type of like perhaps like like the dispersal or where the magnetic materials kind of congregate. Maybe like they kind of all kind of come into some spots. Couldn't really find any specific information regarding New Mexico as being any kind of like standout subject in the terms of like magnetic fault lines or magnetic anomalies, but could be.
Here's the thing, like, and this, when I read that, I was thinking that maybe if these are some like, charging stations, right, for these things that they come down and they charge on or whatnot, perhaps if this is the account that, maybe because due to pole shifting or something, that it used to be in this location, but it ain't anymore. So when they go there expecting to recharge, maybe they ran out of juice or whatever powers their ship.
And then they
crashed there, not realizing that the poles had shifted or reversed from the last time they were passing through Earth.
So we're in this theory, we're saying that either this magnetic fault line is the cause of the crash of not only the Roswell crash, but Aztec, and there actually is more. I'll get to it in a little bit. There's a guy who says there are actually 7 crashes throughout like 6 years or something.
Well, right, that would make sense, because let's just say this. So let's say the Roswell crash happens, hypothetical, that one goes down, and then whoever is with this organization, they're like, hey, well, these people went down. We got to send, our search and rescue. They send, and they just fall into the same problem. They're like, what the hell? There's supposed to be these magnetic things for us to stop or operate our ships and stuff, and they're just crashing because they're, they've done math by 9 and now it's off.
Well, like if you go by the theory of like Roswell and stuff, math by 9 and they're off.
You dummies.
Raven's completely right.
Yeah.
It's a bunch of fucking dummies on this show. But no, what about So I've heard before, like some people are like, okay, well, how you can traverse the vast distance of space and time or dimension or whatever, and then you just crash on Earth, right? People are like, okay, well, yeah, a craft could have a malfunction. Sure. We have malfunctions with our most sophisticated
crash
craft.
shit all the time.
Yeah, or I've read before that some version of our radar, like a powerful radar, they didn't anticipate like it would affect their systems, and that's actually what's just knocking them out of the sky. Because all around here, you got at least 2 crashes, possibly 5 other crashes. I'll get to in a second, all within this area, and like we're not far from like this is where, at the time, our most sophisticated, technologies are at work. We're developing atomic weapons, and they're checking out the atomic weapon program, and they're falling out of the sky. That's kind of what it seems like. All around here, these craft are falling out of the sky or crash landing, maybe not necessarily completely losing power, like crash landing into the bank and gouging out a bit and then landing, and they can't take off again, and then they're all dead inside, and we find them. Here's
the thing, though, like we have zero idea on the numbers that are actually visiting us, right? And at some point, you can chalk some of this up to like we call it human error, but just like being error. People make mistakes no matter how advanced the technology is.
Sure.
Right?
Yeah.
So like we have no idea how maybe there's 10 of them visiting us a day. And you look at the numbers, it's really not that many crafts that we've fucking seen, right? That have crash landed and actually tangible, like gotten our hands on. Mm-hmm. There's probably none, but if
it's to be believed there's more crafts, I would have to go with Zell that something's affecting them, only because like those kind of mistakes don't happen in a pattern like that. I would kind of akin it to like, what's the dangerous gas that builds up
CO2?
in compost and stuff? It's really
methane
gas.
Yeah. Is it methane? Yeah. I don't know if it's methane. H2S. That's right.
H2S.
Right. And
I took the course.
Yeah, me too. I don't remember what it is. You breathe it in, you die. And then what happens in a lot of times these situations is people will come on the scene, see you lying, think you're hurt. They'll come to check on you, and then they die. And then someone else comes and goes, hey, look at those 2 guys. We got to go help them. They walk in, they die. This kind of scenario kind of seems like that, where it's like a crash, and then people are like, well, why'd they crash? They come and they crash because it's like, maybe they, like Zell said, they think that we're so primitive that these things will not affect us.
Yeah. Now, just before we move on a little bit here, I want to talk about this one guy. He's got a great website. You got to check it out. ChuckWadeUFO.com. So this guy, Chuck Wade, grew up.
That's a good name.
That's a good fucking name.
Fucking Chuck
That's a real
Wade.
name. That's a real name.
Good ass name.
It's way better than Braden Rizal.
I think I'm going to go by Chuck Wade from now on.
Anyways, he was born
It's not the best name in this case, though. I'll talk about him after, but go ahead, Zell.
Chuck Wade, born in Corona, New Mexico. So there is a Corona UFO as well, but so close to Roswell. He grew up in the area, and throughout his life, he discovered that there was multiple crashes. And he actually says, here's his list of crashes. You can ChuckWadeUFO.com if you want to check out what I'm reading here. The first crash in New Mexico is August 1945, right? So that's not far after the first atomic weapon blasts, right? Second, so this is before Roswell, we're talking here. Second happened in the plains of San Agustin. So the first one was, San Antonio, 1945, a 25 to 30 foot long avocado-shaped craft, he claims. Second one, the night of the 1st to 2nd of July, 1947, 32-foot diameter craft. Third, they call this one the alternate Roswell. Night of July 4th, 1947, a 25-foot oval craft. Fourth craft, this is the Roswell craft, July 4th, 1947. This is the one that everyone talks about. Fifth craft, Corona craft. So Corona, New Mexico, 30 miles, I think, south of Roswell. 100-foot craft, so the same as the Aztec one.
Shit. Sixth
craft, he claims, he calls it the Jim Ragsdale site, located 53 miles west of Roswell. A 20-foot craft. And the seventh is the one we're talking about here, the Hart Canyon Aztec, New Mexico craft, 100-foot completely intact.
99.99.
We're rounding here.
9.
We're going to give them their base.
You can't round in base 9.
Can't round in base 9. You can't round to 0. So this guy claims there's actually 7. So like we're talking about the last in a string of downed UFOs, according to this guy. Go check him out. ChuckWadeUFO.com. Maybe one of the greatest built websites of all time. You can't beat it.
Yeah.
But he spent
Chuck
his whole
Wade
life.
knows some HTML. That's for sure.
Dude, he's spent his whole life researching it. There's more than just the Roswell craft. There's more than just Aztec.
You're not going to believe in a guy named Chuck Wade?
You have to. A name that powerful?
Yeah, dude.
He's got one of those names where you're always saying the full name. No one's calling him Chuck
Wade.
Everyone refers to him Chuck Wade. You going to Chuck Wade's house? Oh, fuck yeah, I'm going to Chuck Wade's house.
Fuck yeah, pal.
Anyways, I had to throw that in there. So possible 6 other crafts or downed craft in the same region.
In the area.
Yeah.
Okay.
So back onto the subject of Newton, Silas M. Newton and Leonard Gebauer. Now they were known to have been, active in the area. Like Silas Newton had his own oil company at the time in the late 1940s, early 1950s, and him and Gebauer kind of worked together in order to kind of they were entrepreneurs.
Hold on, we're talking about Silas Wade. Not Silas Wade. Silas, what's his last name?
Silas Frank Scully.
Silence Frank Scully, whatever the fuck.
That's not.
You call him an entrepreneur. That's not true. That's not exactly
industrialist.
True. Also, we are missing his
Silas
most important
M.
title.
Newton.
Doodlebugger.
Doodlebugger?
He's a fucking doodlebugger.
That's a great fucking word.
He's a fucking doodlebugger.
What's a doodlebug?
So yeah, a doodlebug is usually used to refer to some type of a mechanism or some type of device, which doesn't really have a type of function. And it was, but they used the doodlebug to refer to this device, which I kind of mentioned before, which they were using based on the principles of magnetics that allowed these craft to also fly. I guess Newton and Gebauer had taken the knowledge that they had gained while working on some of these government projects, according to them, and build this mechanism that would be able to detect certain valuable minerals and perhaps oil as well. To allow people to be able to find these oil wells and deposits of minerals in order to dig them up. So therefore, increasing your wealth, whatever you want to do, things like that.
So therefore, he's a doodlebugger.
Doodlebugger.
And they were doodlebuggers. So
well,
they were doodlebuggers.
And I read and listened to different reports that had claimed that this guy was just a really talented oil man, and they said he could find oil anywhere. And when asked how he was so good, he would just say, it's my alien tech I got, kind of tongue in cheek kind of thing. I'm a doodlebug. I got the alien tech, and it was more tongue in cheek than anything. But but this is the prevailing account is obviously that what Dan's talking about.
He's a doodlebugger.
Doodlebugger.
Now there were some people who are not quite convinced that Newton and Gebauer were completely on the level with the technology that they were using. One of the people that had kind of ended up lodging a complaint about Gebauer and Newton and their technology was one Herman A. Flater, who was a Denver-based industrialist, and he had been sold on the idea that this doodlebug could find these hidden oil deposits, and he had to end up investing with the pair, believing that his investment would go ahead and it would definitely pay off, as how Newton and Gebauer kind of sold him on it. Now, according to Newton and Gebauer, according to Newton, each doodlebug was supposedly supposed to cost $800,000 to produce. And so,
$800,000 in 1940 for 50?
Yeah, $800,000 to produce, but he was only asking Flater to invest $50,000 to buy in, which seems pretty. That's a pretty good deal. It's a pretty good return if you're going to put in $50,000 for an $800,000 product, and then that's potentially gonna find you a nice sweet oil well or valuable minerals of some type. Pretty appealing.
That'd be worth $9 million today.
Holy shit! Per piece of equipment.
Per one of those, but I mean, you only needed one, right?
Yeah, expensive doodle bugger, buddy.
It's true.
I should have gotten the doodle bug business. God damn.
Yeah. Now it ended up that some people got their hands on one of these, proprietary or whatever these doodle bugs, got them and kind of ended up nicking them and pulling them apart. And the estimated actual cost for one of these things, it was roughly about $350. It was mainly constructed from pieces of like like surplus Army radio equipment and things like this that you could probably find at any kind of.
That's a good fucking return on investment right there.
Yeah. So not 100% sure about how clear these things are, or how successful these things were, because it's never really looking through it. None of these, any of the oil prospecting that's out there. I never remember reading anything about anything attributed to a doodle bug discovery. I would think that would be something that would be heavily advertised. If you were to, if you produced it, you'd want it in the newspaper as much as possible. But
yeah, if you could sell it, if you can go $800,000 for a $3.50 investment, you can sell one of those, and you have estate fortune for 10 generations.
Well, I mean, the device itself was kind of determined by those people kind of took it apart, electronic specialists who got their hands on it, and eventually kind of it was alleged that these things were essentially useless. That they didn't do any of the stuff that they were reported to do or claimed to do. They were just kind of just random radio equipment kind of smashed together. Gebauer was known as a type of an electronics craftsman of some sort, and he kind of would just like kind of construct these things together. And you put a doodle bug together, and you're just saying like, hey, look at this thing here. I put there's kind of an interesting anecdote where it's like they were selling it to Flater and Gebauer apparently was like disassembling it or assembling it in front of him and was like kind of taking it apart and showing him different pieces of it. And he was showing like these 3 silver marble pieces, and he was telling he told he heavily implied, or he directly told him that these 3 little silvery marbles that he was holding that were part of the were a part of the machine were made of plutonium.
See these?
Oh,
these are Steelies. These are the best marbles you can get.
Yeah.
All right. So, better than Smashers. Better than anything.
100% plutonium.
How they got their hands on plutonium back then is, that, I mean, sure, you would have to work for some type of government, highly secretive government agency in order to get your hands on plutonium and then be able to sell it to, prospective oil prospectors, I suppose.
Right.
So, I mean, I would assume it'd be highly regulated back then as it is now. Even if you could order, types of uranium and plutonium, like small pieces, like off of Amazon, stuff like that. But I'm pretty sure that puts you on a list.
You can order them off Amazon right now?
Well, for like types of like little experiment, like, home chemistry projects and stuff like that. For really small.
Amazon.
I'm not sure about plutonium. I think uranium. Like,
I'm on the no uranium list.
I remember uranium ore. Oh, I can buy. Hey, look at that. I can buy it.
Yeah. But I'm pretty sure that would put you on
radioactive content, uranium ore, $40. $40.
Eat it.
Should I eat it? Should I order and eat?
I mean, it's not enriched uranium. It's not the uranium that, you would need like a serious facility in order to produce the kind of uranium that you need like to weaponize. But
I'm sure got a serious facility in his gut right there.
They're not going to. Your selected delivery location is beyond seller's shipping coverage for this item. Damn it.
Yeah,
I didn't realize you could buy some type of uranium on Amazon.
Call Bezos. They owe us a favor. This shit shipped to the studio, man.
Interesting.
Yeah, so there's a bit of controversy as to why, or actually like whether Newton and Gebauer were kind of either selling Scully on this type of story, whether they were actually involved, because some of their history, like we just said, it's like perhaps some of that is kind of paints them in a little bit of unfavorable light. But
it doesn't look good, but
it doesn't look really good. But you still have some people who have dug more into this case, like the Ramseys, who have the Ramseys, the couple are Scott and Suzanne Ramsey, who have published. They published one book, like 3 or 4
their
times.
life's work.
They have two. They have 2 books out and a
third's coming.
Right, but it's just the 3rd edition, right? It's just the same book, but it's been.
Yeah,
I think their first run only did.
As people die, they just keep adding new shit that they're allowed to talk about.
No, they did. Yeah, the first run was 1,000 copies.
Right.
Which is not very many, sold out.
Right.
Good for them. And then there was reissued in like 2012 by a bigger publisher. And I think that actually it's been reissued again for the 3rd print. So.
Right. And they said they've added onto, it's the 3rd edition of this book, specifically talking about the UFO crash. And within their book, like they spent a number of time, and what is it, Braden? You said
over $500,000.
They spent
self-reported $500,000.
20 years plus on this book.
Yes.
Researching.
I think it includes a foreword by the late Dr. Stanton Freeman.
Yep.
How he talked about this book, and when he originally heard about the Aztec UFO, to kind of sum up his feelings about their book, he said that he felt that it was a hoax, like 100%. This is no way that this could have happened. But after reading their book, which is mostly a collection of testimonies by people who they interviewed. Most of them, they started interviewing people when, in the 80s, 90s?
Yeah, early 90s at least.
Early 90s, they started reporting. They started collecting interviews from people who had either been living around that area at that time and perhaps had
or say they were part of the team in some capacity of recovering the craft.
It's interesting because their story, though, like the ones that the Ramseys rely on, like it's completely different than the story we talked about.
Well, we've got 7 UFO crashes, so it could be
a different one, maybe, I guess. Yeah, because like the one they talk about was found by like a bunch of oil rig workers on their way to work.
Well,
not Dr. G and Funky Master Fresh on the fucking Jazzy Jeff or whatever the fuck his name was.
Scientist X.
Yeah, but I think that I can. But I think we have to talk.
You think we have to talk about? We got to talk about Lincoln LaPause.
Well, it's tough for me because I'm like, their account is different, right? They have oil workers doing this. And some of the story makes more sense when you have this craft and you have a bunch of oil workers poking at it and they find this hole, they stick a stick in, like what's in there, and the door opens. I'm like, okay, that's a little more believable than our best scientists just whacking this thing. You know what I mean?
The craft.
Zoolander style.
Yeah.
Files are in the computer, man.
So makes
Lincoln LaPause came on scene and disproved everything. They told us that. Don't tell me you forget that fucking name. That's the coolest name I've ever heard.
I don't remember that.
When they talked to me about Lincoln LaPause, initially my brain instantly went to a giant kitty cat wearing a trench coat that walks on 2 legs that talks like this. And when he talks, there's a long pause after he says everything.
What did he have to do with
He came and disproved. He was the first person that showed up on scene and said, "Oh, it's just like fucking there's nothing here. There's nothing in for here. It was just asteroids. No big deal. Don't worry about it. How you doing? Keep it moving." That's what
asteroids?
He said to
Yeah. That's what he said? Are you getting that terminology right?
I heard it in the Richard Dolan fucking interview, man. Lincoln LaPause. I'll never forget that name. It's the coolest name I've ever heard.
I think you got the name right.
I know I got the name right.
But
Lincoln LaPause.
Yeah, it's a giant kitty wearing a trench coat. It kind of looks like Puss in Boots, but like he's got one of those cool hats on too. Talks like a Southern gentleman.
Yeah, so they've spent their entire life and researching this and digging into it and trying to prove that it is more than a hoax and that there's actually something to this case. And they have a lot of corroborating evidence of people who have never or seemingly have never kept in touch who give the same accounts, which I find is a fascinating thing because, it's like, that'd be like me and Andrew concocting a host and be like, just in case if a couple ever talks to us in 40 years, let's get our story straight of some details that you and I can only know. And then they, and then we never talk again until these people come. So
I don't know. You also have to take me and yours fucking credibility in account that they actually interviewed real people that were there and witnessed this shit.
I read some of the book, like a lot of the book, it's kind of unavailable unless you want to buy like a $50 paperback copy, which is like, that's a little bit too much for me to buy $50. But
they're fucking $500,000 in debt from this shit. So they have to charge.
Trying to read some of this, like it is from what I got, like a couple, like the previews of the book, it's a very dense narrative written by them. It's a lot of names, it's a lot of places. And, they kind of put this stuff out. What I found interesting is like you find one story from one person, not like these people knew each other. It's like, it's just a lot of people who were there around the area. It is just like, there are people like Braden said, they are separated. It's separate people. It's not like groups of people. Like, at least from what I was reading.
Well, some of it is like the oil field workers that were together. They're a group of people that were the first ones on scene, according to them.
There's two cops too.
Two cops.
Sharon Pye. There's Lincoln LaPose.
Right, and so there's some different groups of people there. But
I remember reading the part about the oil workers, like the oil field workers coming out and creeping up on there. And then there was also some mention of like an archaeology outing that came across it. Like there was an archaeology class or some type of.
I didn't hear that. That's cool. Indiana Jones is there doing some freelance work. That's pretty cool.
It seems like a lot of people. Like a lot of people were there. That's all this thing.
Dude, the archaeology route though, if we remember that interview with Bob Lazar on Joe Rogan, and then he's like, yeah, they dug some up in an archaeological dig, and then no one said anything more about it. We're all like, what the fuck do you mean archaeology?
Well, they were there by accident. Like they had seen, like apparently, like according to one account, it was like this archaeology class or outing had been out there, and then they had seen like something at night. Like they had seen something coming through the sky, like a fireball or something.
Well, yes.
Green fireball.
Dan, I think, fireballs. Yeah, there's a lot of accounts, but I think what you're thinking of is, because they do talk about some accounts of the green fireball, because I had no mention from them about an archaeology class at the crash site. They did talk about seeing the green fireballs that frequent New Mexico. So maybe we're kind of getting because when
I didn't hear that either in that Dolman interview.
Everything interview I've heard with them, and I've listened to a couple now. There's the oil field workers, the two cops, and then the Lincoln LaPause.
One of those cops was a survivor from the Baton Death March too. Fucking badass.
What was that again? That's like a New Mexico.
No, that's World War II, where the Japanese made the POWs march until they died.
Oh fuck.
Yeah, dude, and he survived that shit. So you can only imagine he's hard as fuck.
Hard as fuck, man.
Hard as fuck. He had no time for Lincoln LaPause's shit, but whatever. It is what it is.
I mean, it's a really cool case. A lot of people chalk it up to like, oh, it's all just a big fucking hoax. Then you get some people that, they've dug their whole lives in. They've matched the events of this one crash to 6 other ones very close to this region, to Roswell. There's like, and a lot of people say like the theory of we didn't really get these modern UFO sightings until we started blasting nukes, right? And it all kind of coincides with the development of atomic weapons and the atomic age, and this is right around then.
It's hard not to jump to the hoax conclusion, because as soon as you type this shit into Google, the first thing that comes up is like Wikipedia, the fucking Aztec UFO crash hoax.
Easy on the Wikipedia though.
And here's the thing, though. This case, for the longest time, was considered a hoax by the mainstream media, by UFOologists, all the big names. Everyone pretty much wrote this one off as a hoax. And that's because of the articles written by J.P. Kahn.
Kahn. Oh, bitch.
So the story goes that there's varying accounts. There's J.P. Kahn's versions and there's Frank Scully's versions. But the story somewhat goes is that, at the time, J.P. Kahn had made an offer to Frank Scully whether to give him proof or exclusive rights to the story. J.P. Kahn says it was to provide proof, and Frank Scully says he wanted to purchase the rights to the story, even though he had already had publishers. And Frank Scully told J.P. Kahn, no, basically absolutely not. So Kahn set out to basically run a smear campaign using his. He had way more influence. He was writing for the San Francisco Chronicle. He was writing for all different newspapers and articles. And he used the two Grubauer and
Silas Marsh or something like that.
Yeah, Silas M.
Newton.
He used them. He kind of focused in on them as to just paint this smear campaign and write absolutely everything off. He's the person that gave information to the FBI claiming that these two, were claiming frauding people and claiming that they had this alien tech, which was investigated by the FBI. And he claims in interviews that he's like, yeah, I made these claims or I told the FBI about this and, they got arrested for it. But that's not really what happened. They got, they got arrested for taking fraudulent claims from another business deal that didn't really have to do about aliens across state lines.
Credibility a bit, though.
Yeah, but right, and then he basically tanks this story. He single-handedly tanks it, right? And it's not until the Ramseys come in later that go, hey, maybe there was a little more to this than everyone just instantly bought onto J.P. Kahn's story. Maybe there's some more to this that's worth looking into.
Right.
And some of the fascinating things that the Ramseys talked about is, they've done tons of FOIA requests on FBI documents relating to this event and the bases around this event. And they talked about doing a FOIA request. They got this huge document and, everything's redacted. All the names are redacted except one name. And they're like, well, that's kind of interesting. Why is this one name? They thought it was a clerical error. They thought they'd do the good thing. They went in and talked to these people like, hey, look, is this a clerical error? They're like, we don't know, maybe. They end up tracking this guy down. And this guy, basically his job on the military base was to track personnel records, right? And they asked if a government was going to cover up, say, a recovery of this, could you essentially do it? And he went, well, I'm not saying you could, but what I would do is I would just say you were on the base. And then the week you were gone, I'd say you were injured in the infirmary with the sore ankle. And that's what I put on the personnel records. And we would fudge those. So that way later on, if you leaked anything, we could easily go like, no, you weren't. You were on this base. And then you hurt yourself playing beach volleyball. You're a liar.
You're full of shit.
Right?
Playing with the boys is playing. You were in jean shorts and you're all fucking lathered up playing fucking volleyball, bud. You're fucking lying, son.
Now, I found that fascinating that you could, falsify records like that. I don't work, but if, taking their account like that, that's an interesting thing because when I was looking at this case and you hear about, all this, military crews coming in for weeks and stuff, it got me thinking that, maybe the government at this time is just getting better at covering these things up and getting better at recovering these crafts, not having notice. And one of the things that they talked about was that one of the people they talked to that said they were driving truck for the military in this area to recover some sort of craft, they didn't know what, was that some of the ground on the mesa was so soft that they actually had to lay concrete pads down in two sections to get vehicles over. So they told someone who was in the area, I think it was either in the area or may own the land now, who went through with a pipe and they were just basically sticking it through the ground to find. And they found a huge concrete slab near the alleged crash site.
Oh, cool.
Which got the Ramseys thinking, well, this is very interesting. We want to try to find the second one because he said there's two. They haven't found the second one yet. Debunkers said to them, hey, listen, it's just well caps, right? It's just oil well caps. That's all it is. Well, they've drilled into them and they're not well caps. They're just slabs with rebar. Yeah. But they're just like, it's just slabs in the sand. There's nothing else.
It's interesting to say that though, because when you say they've gotten better at this, because this was after Roswell, wasn't it?
Right.
Yep.
Remember
right? So maybe they learned from Roswell.
Well, here's the thing, that Roswell's 8 months ago, they come out and they're like, remember they give the news report. We got a spaceship. And then they're like, no, we didn't.
Hold that shit.
Didn't. Like they were making policy and procedure, I think, at that crash as it was happening. They had no idea. So obviously they're like, hey, something's happening. We need a plan, right? And their contingency plan now was get in there, disprove everything to everyone, right? Spread out the witnesses. Nah, it's this. Get them out there. Keep it out of the media. Don't let any story filter through the media. Clean up the craft. Fix the area, because pictures that the Ramsey show trees and planted areas that they look, arguably, they're in straight lines. It looks like someone planted these trees in this area. Like they're not just random. They're just in nice, crisp, uniform lines. And I think the military's gone in. They know now. They're like, we can't leave any wreckage. We can't leave any evidence. And the only evidence they couldn't fucking deal with in this one is the horizontal line on that side of that fucking hill where it skimmed into before it crashed, right? Everything else, they bulldozed, they flattened, they re-agricultured, pulled it out of there and took it away.
You know what that reminds me of is when we did the hell's that place? Hell's Gate Bull Canyon.
Yeah.
Right? Same thing with the plane hitting that canyon and leaving that giant laceration in it.
Yes.
Right? It's very similar. It's interesting.
I just think that this is proof that they were getting better at this time. They were ready for it. They knew something was happening. Maybe we could detect more than we know, and we knew these anomalies were happening. So we were prepared, because the Ramseys also talked to a lot of the people in Aztec, New Mexico, because these people were also surprised that they saw helicopters at the time, because helicopters were brand new. So this was a big deal when all of a sudden there's these helicopters flying over town, and then next thing you know, the military's rolling in. They're like, look, what are these fucking helicopters doing up here?
Helicopters are probably that most people would have seen a helicopter back then and been like, well, that's an alien craft. Like, what the fuck is that thing?
Right? You would have been like, what the hell?
That would have been right around like the start of helicopters. Like, what, 1940? Yeah. What are we at?
Yes.
40.
Dan 48.
48?
Yeah, 48. No, I mean, they would have been, like, helicopters were used, like, at the end of World War II. Like, people knew what they were, but, I mean, they weren't full into, I mean, we were in the Vietnam area. I mean, I think they were in use during the Korean War, but not full on. They weren't, like, used like cavalry units. Like
whenever MASH was.
The first helicopter was the VS-300 was in 1939, but it didn't look like any type of, there's just a dude sitting on like a scaffolding with a blade. Like it's not like a real craft.
I don't even think they called it a blade back then. It was a decapitator.
Yeah, they had the funky looking helicopters. They weren't like the Hueys that you would see. It's just like the ones that had like the big bulbous front and then like the little cockpit on the top. Like it's But
that's what I'm saying. Is like so there's things that stand out for people around this time.
Yeah.
Right. So it's to chalk it up to a just an absolute hoax, like J.P. Kahn did in his articles. I honestly don't think we can do that anymore, because there's too many accounts, right, of people who claim to have seen this thing, right, up close, and people who weren't friends, didn't know each other, and have never talked since, who give the Ramseys similar information that's not known to the public.
Right.
We're just getting this from the Ramseys, though, right? Like, it's just, that's the information we're getting directly from them in their book. Like, there's no real, like, no one's come forward and been like,
I mean, Yeah,
There's nothing to
there's
corroborate.
Ramses and one other book that I think that are written, and that's pretty much it. About
Well, you got
this.
$500,000 laying around. We can start calling these people, having them on.
You got 20 years? You guys want to spend the next 20 years researching one event?
I'm just saying, like, it honestly, like, looking at them and hearing them talk and looking at their books and their publishing, I'm like, I don't think this is something that they're like, I think they've stumbled on something and it's changed them. And they're like, no, there is something here. And they're pulling strings that are leading to other things.
Hey, they're on, 20 years of research, they're convinced of something. 100%.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Like,
well, not only are they convinced, but they've changed the minds of a lot of UFOologists and people in this community that had completely written off the Aztec crash.
It's true, because we talked to Richard Dolan. This guy's one of the best. He's researched everything. He's listened and done everything. And he had the couple on for a two-parter. And I'm not saying he was convinced that this was a real event or anything, but he was open to them exploring their theory. That guy's a beauty. Richard Dolan, I love him. Like, he was fucking
He's a
awesome,
great guy,
dude. Awesome.
I'll say this. He has some questions for some of their claims.
Of course.
He has questions, but some of the things that he, after listening to him interview, that I would say that he's on board with is that JP Kahn pretty much ran a smear campaign against Frank Scully. He was pretty much on board with that. He's like, yeah, that's pretty compelling that that's the case. You have two wildly different accounts, right? You have even you listen to JP Kahn in later interviews, like, his story doesn't really line up with the facts that we even know. Like, he's embellishing, and he kind of seems like a rich little petulant child, to be honest.
Facts, though? Do we know the facts?
I mean, do we
know anything?
We
like,
know.
I thought I knew facts.
We know that he didn't.
But I
we
thought
know
I knew
that he
facts,
contacted the FBI.
I started this podcast and I heard two different stories already. The story that I learned is completely different than the story that we talked about on this podcast. That's what I know.
The story you learned was misinformation purposely implanted online.
By Khan!
Fucking Khan.
Well, but here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. Like, if the military is, say, getting good at this kind of work, right, of debunking, covering up, maybe JP Kahn was the useful idiot in this case, right? Where they got wind that Frank Scully's writing this book out, and they're like, all right, well, hey, this is perfect. We've got some information. Let's give some tips to the old JP Kahn here. Get him on the case. So do you think
that was before or after JP Kahn published his entire scathing article criticizing the government for the internment of Japanese citizens of the United States during World War II?
Well, when was this? So this would be after? When did he write that article?
This
I would imagine before.
Right before then?
Timeline, because when was the crash?
48.
And the crash is, he wrote his article
in
came
1950.
After,
yeah, so obviously he wrote that before 1950. The
war is already over. The government said this is the guy that we need.
But here's the thing, Dan. I'm not saying that they approached him and they're like, hey, we're Mr. Government. We would like you to help us. I'm saying that, like, you just gave this guy the breadcrumbs he needed to go where he needed to go, right? And then, like, maybe they led him on his journey of writing this, this hit piece on Scully. They're like, if we give some of these nuggets.
So he met Newton and Gebauer, right?
Yeah.
He met them, and he got that piece of material that Newton was famous or famed for. He was known for presenting to some of his investors, saying, "This is the material, one of the materials that we use to make our doodle bugs." And
yeah,
it's some type
doodle bugs.
Indestructible material.
Honestly, though, Dan, that account of him getting that piece, you only find from JP Kahn, and the way he says he got it is he brought a replica, even though he wouldn't fucking know what the other one looked like or was the same, and did some.
Why wouldn't he? He would
trick.
see it in a newspaper.
But
he was famous for he was known.
It makes sense though, because it's a fucking fake piece of machinery. It's a fake piece of machinery. It doesn't even work.
Hold up.
It's a fucking grift to begin with.
JP Kahn says he brought one and then did a magician's trick that he learned some sleight of hand and tricked them and gave them the wrong one as he palmed the one they did. I was like, so you're telling me one, you had an identical one in your hand, even though you'd never seen it before. You now know magic, right?
No,
you're
he learned
sleight
that
of hand expert.
Yeah, he said he learned that trick from one of his friends who was a magician. Like he knew an actual magician.
Broke the magician's code. What a piece of shit.
Yeah.
But I'm not talking about the specific. I'm not talking about the doodle bug. I'm referring to the piece of material.
Yes, that's what I'm referring to too.
Right, and it looked like regular aluminum.
Yes, but his account, the only account that you have of him getting this is from him doing this great handoff manipulation where he, uses his sleight of hand trick that obviously the Men in Black taught him. Right? Sure. That's the only other people we know who do sleight of hand tricks.
I think you saw, you did not
but
see.
When I listened to him tell that, and I'm like, oh, you learned a hand. I was like, show the trick, like show the sleight of hand trick. How did you know?
Were you saying that to a recording?
Yeah, I was, and I was like, how you have a disc? Like, how do you know that even is the same? What if it weighed different? You have no idea. You've never put your hands on it. Like. It seems ludicrous to me that you would just fake these guys with a sleight of hand.
So how come Newton and them didn't call him out on it then? If he just
because I don't believe it happened.
Well, he took a piece of the aluminum and he gave it to him. Like,
I don't believe that's.
I'm not saying
this is according.
It might have
to
actually happened.
This is according to JP Kahn. That's it. That's the only account. It's not like these other two, Silas M. Newton and Leonard Grubauer, came out and were like, "Yeah, we did meet this." The account is single-handedly from JP Kahn.
But when he published it, how come Newton and them didn't refute it then? They could have hit him with slander. They could have hit him with defamation.
They already were fucking dealing with the fact that they made a product that doesn't work. That's fucking make believe.
Dude, this is 1950s. These are oil guys. Maybe they're out conning in the desert.
They're trying to con people into a fake fucking piece of machinery called a doodle bugger. That doesn't work.
Here's the thing.
Bullshit. And they couldn't sell it, so they tried to say it was made with alien technology.
According to JP Kahn.
It's fucking bullshit.
All that's according to JP Kahn, man.
JP Kahn's JP Kahn's a con artist, motherfucker. Fuck that guy.
Kahn! I just his account of I'm like to take Kahn's word on everything, and then you hear him tell the stories. I'm like, I get an air of bullshit from him. I just
agree.
do.
Not from the guys that patent the doodle bug.
I'm not okay. I know you're really fucking stuck on the doodle bug thing, but this has nothing to do
with the fucking random stick poking holes and stuff and open up staircases and the doodle bug, and I just can't do it.
You pretty much got to show Andrew a legit video of anything, or he's not going to get it. So
it's just one of the. Can we get a final thoughts? Can I just?
Yeah, we gotta get wrapping up here, or go on forever.
The only thing is, like with these kinds of stories, is that it ends up being one of those things where it hinges on one person or the other. Who do you believe? That's it. Like, whose word do you take at face value? And when it's like something like this, when it's a topic that's so kind of complicated and has a lot of moving parts, when you get down into it, it's very difficult to do that. So, you can't really go on a lot of things. It's just like this person says this person says that, he said, she said. It's kind of just gets into that. You really can get into the weeds in this one. But for me, it's kind of like, why didn't anybody say, no, that wasn't right?
Well, just a quick point on that. Dude, it's not like there's the internet and they're like, hey, I'm trending on Twitter. It's like they would have to like read the San Francisco Chronicle, or how the fuck would they know?
But you already said that was one of the more popular ones. He'd already been published a lot of times. Like they'd already been, if they were mentioned in an article, like they would have probably, especially the San Francisco Chronicle, which is a popular publication, like they probably would have heard about that.
I don't think, I think we are too spoiled in how connected our world is now to even realize how unconnected it was in the 1950s.
I think you're underestimating how many people read a lot of newspapers back then, because that's pretty much all you had to do. That was your information.
But there was news. It's not, there was newspapers in every community, right? Like every community's had newspapers.
Right. And you had small knit communities. This like community had would be newspapers. Like, hey, Silas, like you have an oil company, and like someone be, hey, Silas, like you're in the news. Some guy wrote a whole like a 7-page article about you in the San Francisco Chronicle.
I think we're also in this day and age a little too reliant on the first search on Google. The first search on Google says this is an absolute complete hoax, but it doesn't mention anything else that Braden's talking about.
I didn't read it.
I'm just saying, is if you just Google Aztec UFO encounter, it's going to say this is a complete hoax. Everything about this is a complete hoax.
You're going to get JP Kahn's articles. You're going to get almost nothing about the Ramseys and their work and the accounts that they.
I think the Ramsey thing comes up before anything else for the hoaxes.
I mean, the hoax was the first thing that came up for me, but I didn't click. The only research I did for this was the Dolan interview.
Because Dolan fucking rules.
That's
Dolan rules.
One source for research is a totally valid way to approach some of these.
I bought all into this. I was really enjoying it until the first thing I learned from this is there's two different completely fucking stories, and I'm like, oh, okay.
Yeah, and like that's my final thought is like at the end of the day, you have to come down to some of these and be like, who do you believe? Because it's really just one person's word against another.
Okay, boom. There we go. We got Dan. He gave his. Andrew gave his. Braden, what do you think? Go.
I think this crash happened. I think it's real. I think the military at this point in time just had were prepared.
Ducks in a row.
They had their ducks in a row. They knew what they were going to do and they executed it flawlessly. And I think all this muddy water that we see is planned and executed perfectly. Exactly how they wanted to, exactly what they were planning for after the Roswell debacle. Of coming out and saying, never mind, that was a mistake. I believe that in the 50s with JP Kahn coming out, I believe he wrote this stuff and it's easier to believe. Listen, I love aliens, but if you're giving me two stories and you're going to say like, hey, it was a hoax, it's always going to be easier to believe it's a hoax. It's always easier to lean into it's a hoax than to be like, well, hey, this might be actual evidence of a UFO. It's always going to be easier. So I think that's what the general public did. And everyone is when he came out and he's a credible guy, he had a lot of history and he came out and he said this was a hoax. Everyone just was like, then it's a hoax. And they left it at that. And they never did any digging because I wish someone, had done the digging that the Ramseys are doing now back then. I do believe that maybe the Grubauer and Silas M. Shyster.
Newton.
M. Newton. If they were indeed Scully's sources, which he does name, that maybe because they're old, this is a story they've heard secondhand, right? Like this is secondhand knowledge that they've now been like, well, this is my story now. And I can tell the story and they tell it off as their own. People do that all the time. Right, where they'll hear a story secondhand and then they try to make it that it happened to them. And
shouldn't that affect their credibility too, though? Pretending like a story that didn't happen to them happened to them.
But I'm saying that just because I don't care about those two credibility.
Fuck those people.
Like when you look at the Ramsey's work and stuff, they've interviewed people that. So now what you're saying is these people. So now we have a situation where, like Dan said, who do you believe? Do you believe JP Morgan or JP Kahn? JP Kahn and his version that these two are shysters going and that, they maybe conned Frank Scully into writing this book and Frank Scully was kind of an innocent party in this, which would then, if that's the story, that would mean then the Ramseys now are either perpetuating that hoax and everyone they've talked to is fake and has a fake account, or everyone they talk to is perpetuating the hoax.
Or if they genuinely believe these people.
And these people genuinely believe what they saw.
Yeah, I have no issue with that. Zello assumed my fucking final thoughts, but yeah, no, that's fine.
So anyway, that's mine. I think this happened, and I think the oddities of like this concrete slab in the middle of this area that's doing nothing, the evidence on the side of the hill, horizontal, I think this points to something crashed. And the government just excelled at muddying the water, getting this craft, getting it out, and taking it away without too much noise.
All right,
that's my final thought.
Andrew says I said his final thoughts for him, but it seemed to me pretty apparent. So, Andrew, you want to give a quick?
I'm good. I'm good. I just from the narrative that Braden was leaning on, that's kind of where I called bullshit. I didn't really like the side that Newton and the other guy, can't really remember his name, were painting with the gobbledygooker and all that kind of stuff.
Gobbledygooker.
I really enjoyed the original story that I found, and I truly believe that the people definitely witnessed something, especially with the mass fucking sightings of the green fireballs in this area too, the proximity close to fucking Roswell. Like, I definitely think somebody fucking saw something.
Chuck Wagon or whatever.
Chuck Wade. Like, Chuck Wade doesn't lie. We all know that. And you think you lie, you're going to get a fucking knuckle sandwich, so you better watch it.
Yeah, that's pretty much what I think. I'm not leaning heavily on hoax or heavily on this is the absolute truth. But I think that if you go look through ufology lore of all the events around this time, right around the atomic age, the birth of the atomic weapon, and the sighting of saucers and crashed craft, whether that we've talked about it before, whether that craft be extraterrestrial or some type of failed military experiments, either from Germany or Soviet Union or United States, or some type of tech that, followed the World War II and all the advanced technologies. There's a lot.
It's not aliens, it's the Russians. And it's like, according to Annie Jacobs, they're just so far advanced in this time at aerodynamics than we are led to believe.
Yeah, so I think I'm not leaning either way. I'd like a little more. It's tough when cases are so old, and then the best version of the case we get is like 60 years later. It makes it tough. It just does.
It is.
There's no question about that. I'm somewhere in the middle. I mean, I love aliens, and I want to believe. I got a fucking poster over here on my shoulder. It's over my left shoulder here. I want to believe so bad, so I just want a little more information on this one. But it's fun, and there is 6 other cases right around this time, within the 8 months prior to this, that all are very similar. So it's pretty cool. Mm-hmm. All right, we got a theory of the week.
We do have a theory of the week. Our theory of the week is Joseph Ashley.
Joseph Ashley, woo!
Probably the greatest. That guy cut the greatest Patreon promo on the face of the planet for us.
He did,
literally.
It's heartfelt. It was very nice. I read it when I came back. I saw it. Basically got us 20 new Patreons by just bleeding to people. It was nice. Very thoughtful. We didn't ask.
No, we didn't ask. And it led to a lot
We've
of...
never asked you guys to do that, but...
It led to a lot of discussion.
A lot of dialogue was to be had.
A lot of dialogue. And
constructive criticism.
It brings up a point, like we do a podcast. There's millions of there's like a million podcasts. There's tons of creators, and everyone's trying to get you to support them. And it's no joke. That's the modern version of content creation. And so he made some good points on there. There was a lot of dialogue back and forth. Some people are like, "Oh, I didn't like the bonus content." I was like, you know what? Supporting up something you like, whether it be a podcast or a band or a video creator or any type of content creator, you should support if you like their free content, that's what you support. And all the bonus stuff is bonus.
It's bonus. Yeah.
That's fucking crazy insightful, though. When I read that, I was like, Jesus, like, why am I even replying to these people? Zell's got all the answers. I'm like, that's exactly what should be said. Like, that's perfect.
Yeah, Andrew's like, suck it.
Yeah, suck my ass.
Yeah, suck my ass, buddy.
What's your address? You want to fucking fight? Fuck you.
Donate now, and fucking Andrew come to your house and beat shit out of you.
He will fight you.
Yeah.
Or try to.
I was nice. I didn't say anything.
No,
somebody called us lazy, and I was like, listen.
No,
that's not.
Motherfucker, fuck you.
Everything we do takes effort, motherfucker. All right.
That's the thing. If you're looking to support someone just for their bonus content, that's not the way. If you got to like what they do for free, and if you like that, you support, and then all the bonus stuff is extra. So
if you like it, bonus.
Yeah.
Just go to Patreon just to listen to fucking Zell and his eloquent shit. Just the stuff he says sounds so perfect. It's beautiful.
Yeah. Anyways, and if not, and you're tight on cash and you're living paycheck to paycheck, the show is free and always will be.
$3.99.
And there you go. Nothing wrong with that. Just keep. You know what? If you're listening for free, you want to leave a review or just share it on your socials. That helps just as much. So,
absolutely.
Fuck yeah. All right. And this week's, on that note, newest Patreon supporters. You got the list up because we missed a few last week, so we got a little long list. So let's read them. This week's newest supporters. We got David from Texas, Devin Camplin, Full bottle Cuervo. Sometimes you need one. Mallory Erickson. Ruben Espinoza. Lucas Bately and Desiree Devereaux. Braden, take it.
Woo! We got a $25 pledge from Chris Marino. 54-year pledge by
50.
Corey Spencer. We got a pledge by Javier Jimenez. Matt Lanning. Brady Morris. Steve Fallon. And Edith and Vince.
All right, we got a $5 month pledge by Paul Johnson. We've got Taco Dirt.
Boom.
We've got Prolapsed, Prolapser, Prolapsing. We got El Bubzo, Brian Hubbard, Horace Hadley, Alien Illuminati.
Oh, shit.
We got a $5 per month pledge by Chiapas Wayne.
Nice. Chiapas Wayne.
Got a $5 per month pledge by Axel Salazar. A $5 month pledge by Jeremy. What is it? Ine.
Sure.
All right. $5 month pledge by Anne Marie Gogwin. Goggin? Give me all the hugs.
Yeah, we give Dan the hard ones at the end.
$3 per month pledge by Anthony Perch. Oh, thank God. We got a full year pledge by Ondag. And $10 per month pledge by Curtis Bailey.
Oh, yeah.
And as we always say at the end of those things, keep those eyes on the skies.
See you in after hours.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort, meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.
Man, that sunset is gorgeous.
Grill, patio, sunset. Hard to get better than that. Unless you're browsing Carvana's inventory while you soak it all in.
Oh, burger time.
So sit back, get comfortable. Carvana's got thousands of cars under $20,000 just waiting for you.
I could stay here forever.
Carvana, where car buying meets comfort, meets convenience. Download the app or visit Carvana.com today.